Take it easy. Look at all the comedians in Melbourne here. Don't you have your own fringe shows to do? Or are you just waiting for me to get off the stage so you can do yours? Is that it? I've actually basically just lured you all here so I can talk about Jesus for an hour. So, no, I don't really have any religious beliefs, but my beliefs can be summed up in a single phrase, which comes down to love everybody and forgive everything. Just be compassionate, basically. I don't really think life needs to be that much more complicated than that. But people still feel the need to challenge me. You know, when I tell them that's what I believe in, they're like, oh, love everyone. Or what about Hitler? Do you love him then, do you? And I have to say, yes. I love Hitler. That's going to be the title of the album, by the way. I'll be distributing free copies in the Orthodox Jewish neighbourhoods of St Kilda and hoping that they don't misunderstand my message of compassion. But I think it's important to extend compassion to everyone, including the worst people like Hitler, because I think the worst human emotion that you can feel is guilt. You know, there's all kinds of suffering you can experience, but when you know something is your fault, that's like as bad as it gets. And we don't know what self-awareness Hitler came to at the end of his life. We know he committed suicide. We don't know if he felt guilty, but, you know, he could have been a binge drinker. We've all done things, you know, we wake up after a heavy night out and there's one too many cock photos in the email outbox, and you're like, what was I like last night? But imagine waking up the day after the Holocaust, like, you're there with a hangover, Goebbels is there in the corner with a traffic cone on his head, you're like, your head's pounding, like, man, what was I like last night? I can't remember anything. Was I a prick? Was I? What am I like? What did I get up to this time then? 6 million, really? Shit. Are people pissed off? It's your fault, man. You shouldn't let me mix my drinks. You know what I'm like? If I drink wine, I'm okay. If I drink beer, I'm okay. If I mix wine and beer together, then I will commit genocide. On the other end of the scale of compassion, of course, we've got the Dalai Lama. Does anybody remember the interview with Australian breakfast TV a few months ago with the Dalai Lama, where the guy tried to make the joke that bombed? For those of you who didn't hear it, the joke was the Dalai Lama walks into a pizza place and says, make me one with everything. And it just bombed completely, like it got nothing. And I thought about this for a while, trying to work out why the joke didn't work. And I realised that the Dalai Lama wouldn't walk into a pizza place and say, make me one with everything, because he's already been enlightened. For the joke to work, a normal guy would have to walk into a pizza place where the Dalai Lama was serving behind the counter and say, make me one with everything. That kind of raises more questions than it answers, really. Like, why is the Dalai Lama working in Pizza Hut all of a sudden? Seems to kind of go against his general anti-consumer agenda. But I've got a quote here I'd like to read from you, though. This is from another interview with the Dalai Lama about consumerism from the UK Independent. Journalist is called Johan Hari. His exact quote from the interview. Why do the rich need so much? We each only have one stomach. Well, not you, he says, looking at my belly. You appear to have two. And that's a fat joke from the Dalai Lama. And quite a good one, too. That's better than most of my jokes. Like, how bad would you feel about yourself? The Dalai Lama's ripping on you for being fat. Like, I read somewhere else that every morning when he wakes up, first thing, the Dalai Lama says a prayer of compassion for every living being on the planet. Except this guy, apparently. So, let's all be a bit less like the Dalai Lama, a bit more like Hitler, I think. Is that the point I was trying to make with that routine? But, I think forgiveness is a key point in compassion. And, speaking of forgiveness, a funny thing actually happened to me on the way here tonight. I was raped. Comedy gold! See, there's a big debate going on at the moment about whether or not rape is a suitable topic for comedy. This started a few months ago. There was an American comedian called Daniel Tosh, and he was on stage doing a routine about rape, and a woman heckled him from the audience saying, you shouldn't ever joke about rape. And he replied by saying, wouldn't it be funny if this woman got raped right now? And people were outraged and stormed out of the gig, and a lot of feminist bloggers wrote articles about it. And it started this huge debate about, is any topic off limits for comedy? And I personally think that it's okay to joke about anything in comedy as long as you do it from a compassionate point of view. But I also think that people missed the point of this joke, which is that he wasn't just laughing at the idea of rape. He was saying, wouldn't it be funny if this woman got raped right now? Now, if any of us read of a sexual assault in the newspaper, I think the normal emotions to feel would be like, compassion, anger, empathy. We wouldn't find it funny. But if I was reading the paper and I heard that a woman got gang raped in a comedy club at the exact moment that she was engaged with a debate with a comedian about whether or not rape was an acceptable topic for comedy, I might have a chuckle at the dramatic irony. That's all I'm saying, George Carlin, another comedian, talked about rape. He made the joke, if you don't think rape is funny, then just imagine Porky Pig raping Elmer Fudd. And that's not my joke. I don't want to take credit for it. But I think he kind of missed the point too, really, because it's not the non-consensual aspects of any sexual activity between Porky Pig and Elmer Fudd that make it funny. Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say pretty much any sex between Porky Pig and Elmer Fudd would be funny. Probably funnier the more consensual and romantic it is. Like, maybe like an awkward hand job in the back of a cinema, or maybe like a kiss after a lot of long simmering sexual tension at a New Year party, like Marky Mark and Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights. I'm glad someone finally got that reference, because I've just been driving into the ground for months, hoping that one day there'll be someone who's a fan of Boogie Nights, Looney Tunes, and George Carlin. So I'm glad it was worth sticking with. But my girlfriend actually got raped. This is the true story. In 2005, one of her friends was getting married, and she went away on a hen weekend to Ibiza, and a guy raped her at a beach party. And she came home and she told me about this, but that was all she told me. She didn't want to talk about it any more than that. She said she would go to counselling. She didn't report it because it was pointless. She could barely remember the guy. It was in another country. But she became very depressed and traumatized, obviously, for a period of several months. And she didn't like to talk to me. She found physical affection very triggering. Things really seriously went downhill. And I had the kind of comedian's mindset of like trying to make her laugh and make her smile with something, and just nothing's working at all. And she just got more and more depressed. She started to self-harm. And I can remember like a couple of months after it happened, we were sitting there on a Saturday night and we just watched some shitty, unfunny comedy, and just both of us feeling depressed. And she finally broke down in tears and really talked to me about it in detail for the first time. And apparently the thing that had been so hard about it was that when it happened, it had actually triggered memories of a similar assault that had happened to her 20 years previously when she was a kid, and that she'd blocked out the memory completely, like up until then. And so she's processing all this fucking anger and pain and confused feelings and stuff going on, and she's breaking down while she's telling me this. And she's telling me all this stuff and giving me a kind of defiant look, like, oh, so make a joke about this, Mr. Funny Man. But at the same time, kind of there's a look on her face that suggests that she actually does want me to say something to make it better. And I can just remember, like, I did that kind of dramatic thing where you put your hand on someone's chin and kind of lift their face up so that they're looking at you. And I looked her very deeply in the eyes and just put my finger on her nose, and I went, meep. It was a calculated risk, but but she actually laughed. She laughed, and she seemed to get that I was acknowledging that there wasn't anything that I could say that adequately addressed what she had gone through. And it was the first time that either of us had laughed together in months. And we did that kind of cyclical thing of when she was laughing, that was making me laugh more. And so we're just like on the floor in hysterics. And when something goes beyond being funny to the point of like medical emergency, like you're laughing like, ha, this is so funny, I can't breathe. Oh shit, no, I actually can't breathe. And because I remember having the thought that the movie we just watched was that fucking Wedding Crashers movie with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. And I was worried about dying laughing. And I'm like, if they come and find me that I've died laughing and they find Wedding Crashers in the DVD player, like, that's my comedic credibility fucked forever, like. But yeah, that kind of, we laughed together for the first time, and it was a very kind of healing thing. But, I mean, she did end up killing herself in the end, but I tried. But just so no one misses the point of that routine, it's not the fact that she was raped is what's funny about it, okay? It's the fact that she's dead is what's funny about it. It's not true. She's not. She didn't kill herself. She tried to kill herself in front of me, which was fun. Funny story. To put this in some kind of context, I've always been terrified of death my whole life. Terrified of blood, operations, needles, anything to do with the insides of the body or anything medical. And, like, I've always been okay with the idea that we die eventually, but I felt like we should have a certain guaranteed period of time not to die. Like, right now would be good. But I think, in Australia, life expectancy is about 82 for women and 77 for guys. That doesn't really seem fair, but I reckon if I make it to 76, I'll have a sex change operation and live for 5 more years then. You don't get any sympathy in Australia for having a fear of death, though. I told my Aussie mate, and he's like, oh, there's no point worrying about death. It's a waste of time. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I'm like, cheers, now I'm scared of buses too. How does this help me? So the main way that my fear of death manifests itself is kind of a extreme form of OCD, health anxiety. Like, I mean, my OCD is not quite as bad as it used to be. I used to have to take 3 showers every time I killed a prostitute. I'm getting better, but you know, we're supposed to check our balls like once a month, whereas I kind of check mine like 200 or 300 times a day, and then I go to the doctor like, my balls hurt. And it's like, so maybe you want to stop doing that. But as much as I've had these fears, like, I never really had anything serious medical to deal with until 2005 when I had a wisdom tooth and it was coming in sideways. And it was getting infected and it had to come out, which meant I needed an injection for the anesthetic, and there was no way I was going to let anyone put a needle in me. And eventually I realized that I had to actually face my fears, and I started a course of gradual exposure therapy. I can never pronounce the word therapy. It's so fucking annoying. Like, all my nervousness about tonight's show has been, can I pronounce the word therapy or not? And apparently not. Gradual exposure counselling. Oh, why didn't I just say counselling all along? Gradual exposure stuff, okay? It's when they very slowly introduce you to imagery and things associated with things you're scared of. So say you wanted to be cured of homophobia, they would start off by just kind of playing you some of Madonna's early records, like Papa Don't Preach, Lucky Star, gradually move you through her kind of late 90s material, like Frozen, Beautiful Stranger, and then eventually somebody just comes in and fucks you up the arse. So I like that joke because it's about homophobia while also managing to be very homophobic. There's something for everybody. But my first session in this counselling, I had to come up with what they called a fear hierarchy, which is when you kind of plot your fears from like the mildest to the worst so that they can work you through the exposure treatment. And so my first thing on my list, it was just like, say, looking at a picture of a needle, you know, something I wouldn't exactly like, but it wouldn't freak me out too much. And then a couple of stages up, it was like, say, reading a medical textbook. And a couple of stages more, say, maybe a video of like an operation, something kind of medically graphic, that would have been hard for me to deal with. And then my counsellor asked me what my worst fear would be, and I explained that my girlfriend had had a serious sexual assault recently, and she'd started self-harming, and it had been getting worse, and I was worried she might make a serious attempt on her own life. Anyway, you'll never guess what happened the next day. Yeah, it's like an episode of Seinfeld, isn't it? The way all the plot lines come together with hilarious consequences like that. So yeah, that happened. We were having a party, because that's what you do when, you know, you've got 2 seriously mentally ill people, is, yeah, let's get our friends over to take drugs. This will help. So we're in the kitchen, and she's chopping up limes with a kitchen knife for the drinks that we were mixing up, and we started to argue, because I don't know about you, I always like to make sure my girlfriends are armed when we have serious arguments. It's a recipe for domestic bliss right there. And I said something to the effect of, "You don't care about me," and she said, "Oh, well, if I didn't care, would I do this?" And she starts cutting open her arms and wrists, making it all about her. So I had to wrestle her to the ground, like overcoming my fear of blood in that moment, and just pin her down and overpower her and stop her from actually ending her life. I don't know if any of you have ever had a knife fight with a woman you love before. Like, it sounds fun, doesn't it? Like, it sounds like it would be all Tarantino-esque camera angles and ironic surf guitar music playing in the background, but it's actually quite upsetting. But I did manage to pin her down for long enough to calm down, and she didn't kill herself, and we still had the party, because, we're British, we don't want to overreact and stop drinking. So we went to hospital the next day. Yeah, it hasn't been a good night unless your girlfriend's gone and there's just a trail of bloody handprints going to the door. Like, that really helps with a hangover. But it became quite hard to do comedy about then for some reason. I remember being in the laundrette like 2 days later, kind of washing the blood out of the clothes of my true love and thinking to myself, I might take a bit of a break from stand-up at the moment, like catch up on my screaming. And then 4 days after that is when several suicide bombs went off on the London Underground. And I thought, fuck this, I'm just going to stay inside the house for the next 7 years, I think. Like, I'm not going to try and entertain strangers anymore. Life is getting too weird. And so I quit comedy completely, and I got a job which allowed me to work from home. It was a company called Techsperts that they had in the UK a few years ago. And the principle of this company is that you can send in any question at all by text message, and it will come through to some traumatized agoraphobics on the internet who will stop looking at fetish porn for long enough to look up the answer on Wikipedia and send it back. And anytime I told somebody I had this job, the first thing they would always ask me is, "Oh, what's the weirdest question you ever got asked?" I think my all-time weirdest question was, "What is the volume of the average penis?" Yeah. Let's think about that for a while. Not length, not girth, fair enough question. Maybe volume. Like, I don't know. There's no statistics for this, I'm Googling it, trying to find out. I wouldn't even know how to go about measuring this. Well, now, eventually I realized the only way to accurately measure the volume of something is with water displacement. But it's actually really hard to maintain an erection while you're bending over trying to penetrate a measuring jug. And my girlfriend got really arsey too. She's like, "No, I'm trying to make a birthday cake. Stop fucking the utensils." And then this time of day, we just get people cheating on pub quizzes, and then about 2 a.m. we get everyone asking, "Where can I find a prostitute in East London?" And about 5 a.m. on a Saturday, "How long does it take cocaine to get out of the bloodstream?" I think the darkest ever question was somebody simply asked me, "Should I get an abortion?" And I'm like, I'm not qualified to answer this. I'm scared to leave the house. I can't. But we guarantee an answer. Like, we have to answer these people, And I thought about that for a very long while before I eventually realized that was actually a trick question. Because if you ever find yourself asking a text message service if you should have an abortion, the answer is yes. So that was my life for a while, Just and the internet's a weird place to get sucked into. Like, has anyone seen that site, FetLife? I'm sure I recognise a few people from it here, but yeah, the people who are laughing loudly at that, basically, they've seen FetLife before. It's kind of this. It's like a kind of kinky version of Facebook for like the alternative community, And I remember that I had like no sex life at this point, because of the whole rape thing kind of puts an end to that for a while. And our relationship was kind of deteriorating at this point anyway, just for other reasons. We were on the verge of breaking up, and I was too scared to leave the house. And so my whole sexuality outlet was just, the internet. And I found this site called FetLife, which is supposed to be a kind of healthy kind of Facebook-type site for the alternative kind of kinky-minded community. And I was like, yeah, I'm the kind of kinky alternative person that should be on a site like this. And I was on it for like 10 minutes before realizing, no, I'm not kinky alternative at all. I'm what's known as vanilla in these communities, apparently. I remember clicking on one guy's profile, and he had a toilet seat around his neck. There's no other way to put this. He had shit on his face and his chest and in his mouth. And the weird thing about this profile... one of several weird things about this profile was the strange kind of corporate, polite tone that it was written in. It was like, you know, you get this a lot on dominatrix websites, like, apparently. It's like, oh, thanks for coming by my profile. I have 6 years' experience as a fully trained human toilet. Glad to make your acquaintance. I'm looking forward to making, you know, mutually respectful new connections with you all. And that's what freaks me out, you know? Like, I feel like if you're going to post photos of yourself eating shit on the internet, at least have the decency to be crazy about it, you know? Like, your profile should just say, shit, you know? Like, at least I know where I am with that kind of craziness, you know? But it's just a dark place for the mind to get up, like too long at home on the internet. And eventually I broke up with this girl anyway, and so I was just like on my own and scared to go out and fucking scared of everything and trying very hard not to be an angry, bitter person about it, you know? Like I knew I had issues, but I wanted to deal with them as compassionately as I could. Like I didn't have much of a sense of humor, but I was trying hard to forgive the guy that raped my girlfriend and forgive her for traumatizing me and then leaving me, forgive myself for giving up on comedy when I probably should have tried to persevere with it. And I just recorded a lot of kind of emo music and put it online for 6 people to download. And one of those 6 people ended up being my future wife, like, who taught me how to love again. But she was over here in Australia, which, you know, if you're going to fall in love with someone online, make sure that the most inconvenient point, like the other side of the globe, that like really helps. But now we've been together nearly 4 years and I'm doing comedy again, and I've dealt with like 80% of my issues, I would say. Like the other 20% you're kind of experiencing now. And life is actually okay. Like I'm enjoying life in Australia. I like it here. I just have one complaint. It's more of a request than a complaint. Now that I've been here over a year, can we stop with the drop bear thing, please? Yeah, ha 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 ha. I know that's like the Australian national pastime, is making up shit to British guys to scare us away with all the made-up scary animals over here that you don't have. Like, no, don't come to Australia, mate. You wouldn't like it here. We've got these bears that'll drop out of trees and bite your face off, and you wouldn't want to live here. We've got these spiders hiding under your toilet seat and they bite your balls when you're taking a shit. No, you wouldn't want to live on Australia, mate. We've got these sharks. They come up on the land and they break into your flat. They swap all your DVDs around in the wrong cases. So when you're watching Breaking Bad, you get the seasons in the wrong order. You lose all sense of character development. Undermines the whole premise of the show. And it becomes a kind of redemptive tale about a meth dealer who becomes a teacher. Okay, that's actually all from me. So I sincerely appreciate everyone coming and listening to me inflict my issues on you for half an hour. So thank you very much. Good night. Cheers.